So, quick survey, how many in the audience actually work remote right now? Okay. How many people would like to work remote? Okay. How many people think it's a horrible idea? Okay, so hopefully we'll convince those others that it's actually very awesome to work remote. I have been working remote approximately 5 years, and I really think that it can offer a lot for an organization to work remote. It opens your organization up to a wider market of talent, and with that said, it can also introduce some challenges. Real quick caveat though, as I'm getting started, I do want to mention that I was asked to do this talk literally 3 days ago, so I have no idea how long it's going to go. So my idea is once I get through this talk, we have time, we may have lots of time for some questions. So here's a quote I found fairly interesting. Remote work has opened the door to a new era of freedom and luxury, a brave new world beyond the industrial age belief in the office. That's by Jason Fried. He works for one of the founders of 37 Signals. As I said, I've been doing this for about 5 years. Originally, I worked for Shutterstock. I was one of their first remote employees. Currently, I work as a team lead for Mediamath, 100% remote. And to kind of give a funny story about my time at Shutterstock, they were a little bit, let me just say that maybe some of the company was kind of thrilled with the idea of remote workers, and some of the company was a little bit skeptical. And one of the things they did just to make sure that the remote employees were actually working was they supplied us all with iPads, and we had them on constantly. So in some ways it was good, in some ways it was bad, but I'd literally be sitting on someone's desk, and it would help with code pairing and whatnot, going to meetings, they just carry me around. And one time I just left it on, and they went home because it was Eastern time, and I'm actually located in the West Coast. And the cleaning lady was cleaning up the desk, and I was sitting there watching her clean the desk. And she looks over and she notices that it's not a picture, but there's a moving face on there. She immediately looks away and walks away. Anyways, it kind of freaked out the cleaning lady. So I think there's a number of the benefits for working remote far outweigh the negative aspects of it, both for the employee and also for the organization. The obvious first benefit is, to me personally, there's no commuting anymore. I used to have a 40 to 50 minute commute when I lived in Portland, and that's a big drag. I mean, even if you do have the luxury to maybe bike, that's great, but that is literally 2 hours of your day that you lose right there. Now that I work remote, I mean, it's just instantly I can just go off and do whatever I need to do, and I've saved 2 hours of daylight. Next advantage I could think of is efficiency. So for me personally, I feel as a programmer, I feel way more efficient than I ever was in the office. In fact, just an anecdote, but when I do go to the office, in particular when I go to the office which has an open floor plan, my productivity just drops to almost nothing. It's highly distracting, especially for someone like me who I need to be have to block out sound. And if sound's your thing, then working remote will make you more efficient. The other great thing is you get to create your own office. If you work well in a coffee shop, you can work in a coffee shop. For myself personally, I have my own space set aside in my house. I need to be away from distractions, but some people work great in coffee shops. But the nice thing is you never have to worry about HR moving your desk or the way you have your things set up. Now, of course, there's obviously some challenges. One of the first challenges that, for me personally, this actually is becoming more of an issue as you go long-term remote, isolation. One of the things, I mean, I'm an introvert, and I can go long periods of time without actually having interaction with humans. But thankfully, I have a family who is concerned about my mental health and forces me to have some interactions. And I think that if you're going to go remote, it is a very good practice to get involved in local user groups, hacker spaces, your family, whatever. It doesn't have to be very often, but as much as you need. And of course, also just having balance. I think there's a temptation in particular. I know that, like, as an organization, they're worried that remote workers are not working, but I think that the opposite tends to happen in that remote workers tend to work too much. And there's not a clear line of when to start and when to stop because you're working at your house. I've become pretty militant about my starting and stopping times. I know there's always an exception to this in that there could be an outage or something that you need to do on call. But it's good to have kind of a set time that people can see you online, know when you're available, in particular when you're working across multiple time zones and whatnot. Okay, so let's talk about having good tools. So in order to work remote, I think it's important that you have good software tools and good hardware tools in order to do your job professionally and correctly. Probably the best tool, in my opinion, that I use daily all the time is Teammate. I know that the others may use other things like Screen, Tmux, whatever, but Teammate, the big advantage for it is out of the box. You can do screen sharing like instantly through the terminal. It's amazing. The biggest advantage to it, I've actually have done interviews where I've had to do code pairing sessions. Like I said, I'm located in Oregon, and I did an interview with someone in London at one time, and I could spin up a Teammate session, and it gives you an HTML5 client URL. So you just send them that URL, and they can just connect through their browser to your shell. It's great. If you're really into pairing or code reviews, where you're having interactions, it's just the perfect tool for that. There are some security concerns with it in that it, I don't know, if you go to the website, it explains it, but basically you can spin up your own server, which we've done for it, if you're concerned about that. Screen Hero, I don't know. I've gone through a number of tools for screen sharing. Screen Hero seems to kind of hit the nice spot. If you, in particular, the problem I have with most of these tools is the resolution is never that great. So it's good. This is probably the best one in that if you need to interact with someone else's desktop. I know that you can also just use like there's VNC. There's a number of other ones out there. This one here, it seems like it's fairly popular these days. It allows for some front-end pairing if you have to do some front-end pairing or whatnot. So I use that most of the time. So chat. I think obviously chat is a huge deal when you're remote. I think if you're an organization, you're trying to have a good, robust remote culture, that chat should not be reserved to just the programmers. Project managers, QA people, salespeople, I think they should all be on chat. And I think that develops a culture of so it's just not the programmers on the chat channel and creating this sort of like isolation between them and the rest of the organization. One of the things that we do also with chat is we use HipChat, but we have a room that is dedicated just for complaining. We call it the head to desk room. So there's an emoticon that does the head to desk. So if anything that frustrates you, you can just type that emoticon in there. It's great. So when it comes to like video chat, Google Hangouts is pretty good. We also use Blue Jeans. Appearin is a nice, that's actually the URL to it. It's a nice like backup one, and I think it's just using that, the open source, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head right now, but it's built into Chrome, and you just like type in that URL and you're instantly inside this like Hangout type environment. Obviously, I think you need to have great equipment. If you're an organization that wants to do the remote thing, you shouldn't expect your employees to, I mean, personally, I like my own computers, but you shouldn't expect them to, to pony up for the nice desk that everybody in the office has, or, the computers and whatnot. So they should have all of the computers that they need and hardware. And I also highly recommend having an iPad, both sides. The nice thing about the iPad is that you can have FaceTime running if you're in a meeting and still be connected to your computer without having to really think about switching around on your desktop. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about leading. So this is where you sort of level up a little bit. I am a team lead. I am not an expert when it comes to leadership, and this is not like a leadership talk. My personal view is I'm a bit of an anarchist when it comes to leadership. And I also kind of feel like it's my responsibility as a lead to basically do all the things that nobody else wants to do. And the first primary thing is you want to advocate for your team. Particularly when you're working with a number of remote people across various time zones, you want to take on the role of thinking about what might be painful for them. Like if somebody in New York sets up a meeting at 6 a.m. West Coast time, it's a good thing to step in and remind those people that, hey, there's remote people, you might want to schedule this for another time. Work with your project managers to make sure that we're getting enough time to work on tech debt, any sort of open source things that we find interesting. So just advocate from a technical perspective. I think a good team lead would do that. The one-on-one, this is highly valuable, not just for your directs, but for everybody if you're remote. I have worked out a system where I've set up all my meetings on a Monday, and for the most part, so that I have the rest of the week clear. But I set up all these one-on-ones with various folks, and I think it's great just for with people who are not my directs, but also just people that I work with, just to kind of keep your ear to the ground, what's going on within the organization. It's a great strategy, and I recommend that you just setting up one-on-ones so that you can. I think a good lead would want to know what's going on organizationally. Taco. So Taco is a meeting that we have weekly, which is tech only. I have no idea why we call it Taco. I think it's because another team had a meeting, they called it Burrito. So we went with Taco. Basically, it's just a 20 to 30 minute meeting that we have once a week. Only text, no project managers, nobody to have any sort of insight or say in anything. So we can basically just talk about struggles, technical issues, things that, interesting projects, whatever. There's no agenda, but it's just set aside for that. Okay, so let's talk about like having hard conversations. So one of the things is when you're a lead, when you're doing code reviews or whatever, opinions, there's strong opinions. Coding is it's a personal thing. And so how do you have those conversations? And I think the worst thing you can do is sometimes just doing it over email. My personal take is if the conversation is not happening the way you think it should be happening, you should take it a step closer. So if email is breaking down, if chat is breaking down, then it's time to just do screen time and talking to the person. And also just work on preventing triangulating, which is sort of the opposite thing. Sometimes people will vent to you without actually talking to a person directly who may be having an issue with a particular code opinion or whatever. Encourage people to be talking in the room, be talking directly to each other, these sorts of things. Kind of common sense. Quarterly meetings, highly important. It doesn't have to be quarterly, it could be twice a year. You could also use a conference to get together. But I think the in-person meeting is highly important, and it should be encouraged. Pairing. So this is a little bit of a controversial thing, or it can be depending on how it's done. I am not an advocate of mandating pairing. I am an advocate of encouraging it. I'm an advocate of basically, especially around code reviews. One of the things that I can never really code review well is when, you get a giant, some epic the developer's been working on for 2 to 3 months, and then they drop in a pull request, and they just want a single thumbs up. That is, I don't think that's a great way of doing code reviews, and I think pairing is a great way to spread the knowledge, gain some understanding, and again, it's something that I think that a lead could demonstrate a good way of doing that. And then finally, if you like working remote, you like challenges, I work for Mediamath, and we want you. So come talk to me. We're taking resumes. Thank you. And now I think I have a little bit of time. So if you have any suggestions or comments or questions about things that work for you, yeah.
So I am a leader remote. One thing extra that I would mention is you kind of have to push a little more on things like team building and culture building. Just anything you can do. Just silly stuff. Like we have, our team has a bunch of people make their own emoticons, come in Slack. We have like a chat bot that spits smart calls, chainsaw at us. Just last Friday we got together on like a hangout and tried to play a trivia game together to celebrate our 50th sprint. So try really hard to think of any team building use a lot of that, not on site with each other.
Absolutely. I think everyone heard him. I don't know if I have to repeat that, but I agree with everything there. Yep.
I'm curious how many people in this room work remotely?
Yeah.
So most of your talk will be about between you and your team. What about between you and people you work for? How do you help them manage you?
Sure. Unfortunately, then I have a really awesome boss, and I have no idea. I have no idea if he's actually watching, but yeah. So basically, I have a weekly one-on-one with him, and he's really how I integrate with him is mainly through that one-on-one, and then through chat. That's how we work together. It's not really anything. There's not a lot of anything really weird about it or strange. I don't know if that answers your question at all, but yeah.
Get an awesome boss.
Yeah, get an awesome boss. That's the first step.
Well, and get management mind.
Yeah. Yep.
One way you can address that is a lot of what they need is information about what's going on. If you're a developer, they're like, well, how far along is this? Is it going to be done? And all that other stuff. And a lot of that is really best practice to have it captured and visible anyway. So whatever your ticketing system is, just develop that to the point where they can find out what they need to know by looking into Jira and say, oh, well, it's working through here, or oh, this is a code review, or whatever.
Yep.
And that, that it's a double win because it helps your code is going to be better quality, your processes are going to be better quality. And it's just a thing of like, well, here's this difficulty about him not being able to stop by my desk, or that's an advantage. And turn it into something where, you know what, let's just make sure that we're top notch on documenting and making our process visible.
Yeah, that's all great stuff there. Cool. Well, I think I'm just out of time. So thank you, everybody.